All right, sixth graders, we are going to get started on chapter 21 of Malala. It's called The Promise of Spring. If you remember back in chapter 20, Malala, well, it was titled The Death Threat Against Me, where it was the first threat she actually had against her. And she was trying to think in her head, what would I do if a Talib came against me, or what would I do? And she thought at first she'd hit him with her shoe, and then she decided that that wouldn't make her any better than him because violence is violence, and she doesn't believe in that. So we are going to get started on chapter 21, The Promise of Spring. By spring, the valley had begun to warm. The poplar trees had burst into bloom, and a tiny miracle in the campaign for education had taken place right in my own home. My mother had started learning to read. While my father and I were busy crisscrossing SWAT speaking out on behalf of the girls of our valley, my mother had started working with one of the teachers at the Kashal Primary School. Whenever Miss Ulfat had a break in her schedule, my mother would visit, her notebook and pencil in hand, until gradually the strange squiggles and symbols on the page revealed themselves to her. She was soon able to read Urdu and had started learning English. I love this line right here. Until gradually the strange squiggles and symbols on the page revealed themselves to her. That is kind of what learning to read has to feel like, isn't it? My mother loved schoolwork even more than I did, if that was possible. My father said it was because she had been deprived of learning for so long. In the evenings, she and I would often do our homework together, sipping tea. 2 generations of Pashtun women happily huddled over their books. Meanwhile, my own schoolwork had actually slipped a bit because of all my travels. I could hardly believe it, but Malka-e-Noor had come in first in the previous term, and of course, Kashal seized the opportunity to tease me. While you were busy becoming the most famous student in Pakistan, your rival stole your crown at home, he said. But it hardly mattered. My friends and I were in high spirits because exams were finally over, and our class was about to go on our first field trip in years. During Fazula's reign, all field trips had been canceled since girls were not to be seen in public. Now, finally, our beloved springtime ritual was back. We traveled by bus to the famous White Palace, a wonder built of white marble so unearthly it floated like a cloud. My friends and I stared in awe at its rooms and gardens. Then we ran around, chasing one another in the deep green forest. When we came upon a crystal waterfall, we all posed for pictures. One girl splashed another. The drops of water lit the air like diamonds. It was one of the most beautiful things I'd ever seen, and we all sat dreamily for a while, just listening to the rushing water. Then Muniba started splashing me again. I wasn't in the mood, so I told her to stop, but she did it again and again. My father called for me, so I walked off. When I returned, she was angry with me for walking away, and once again, our typical foolishness put a damper on the day. We rode home in the bus, sulking in our separate seats. The next morning, a man came to our door with a photocopied letter. As my father read it to us, the color drained from his face. Dear Muslim brothers, there is a school, the Kashal School, which is a center of vulgarity and obscenity. They take girls for picnics to different resorts. Go and ask the manager of the White Palace Hotel, and he will tell you what these girls did. He put down the piece of paper. It has no signature, he said. We sat stunned. We knew nothing improper had happened on our trip. Our phone began to ring. The letters apparently had been distributed all over the neighborhood and pasted on the walls of the mosque near our school. It was clear to us now that someone had spied on us during our school trip, and someone had gone to a lot of trouble to spread lies about us and our school. There was no denying it. The Taliban might have been defeated, but their beliefs were still spreading. So just real quick, the letter says, Dear Muslim brothers, there's a school, the Kashal School, which is a center of vulgarity and obscenity. Vulgarity is like when somebody talks or they use vulgar language, it means like maybe they're swearing a lot or they're saying things that are really, really hurtful and mean. That could be vulgar. Sometimes it's, like sexually vulgar where you might be, improperly clothed or that kind of thing. So it's kind of like a really forceful, gross thing. And obscenity would mean that it's just obscene. It's totally unallowed. It's not okay. And so they're saying that the whole school is a center for that. That means that that's what they want for their girls. Now, we know that that's not true because we've been reading this book and we're familiar with the Kushal school. But that's what these letters are saying, and they're all over the neighborhood. So you can imagine what that would feel like for you if it said, Grantsburg Middle School is a center for vulgarity and obscenity, where we of course know that's not true, but maybe the people in the area don't. So, and especially where they live. So anyway, obviously with a death threat and then this letter, this is not a good thing. So, yeah, so we will move on to chapter 22, omens, soon.